Good evening, folks. This is Deb and Dave, and this is your Factivist Report. Tonight, we're continuing on to talk about the workplace. And tonight, we're going to talk about going back to the bad old days of the workplace, courtesy of the GOP. Here's Dave.
Courtesy of the GOP, the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist Society, and the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, if they had their way. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm a little brief history. We've covered a lot of this in our show a couple of weeks ago about child labor and all of that. Just a little bit about the purpose of unions. Not to go into a 3-hour history lesson, but why unions are important. It's not, and this is a decent website, but I'm gonna kind of encapsulate it in this little article that I found. And all of this stuff, I just take for granted at this point. This is things that your bosses don't want to know you have a right to do. Like discuss and negotiate wages. You have a right to tell your coworker, "Hey, I get paid this. Hey, what, blah blah blah. This is whatever. What your severance package is." You're not encouraged to do that, but you can, in order to try to bargain. In my job, the rates are the same, and it's based on years worked, so it's a little different. But you do have a right to do this. Also, to refuse to do anything that is unsafe. Now, to a reasonable degree. And there are times in my job when I've had to say, no, that's not safe. There are nails sticking out of those boards. I can't just grab them. They're this, that, the other thing. So there's that. Right to reasonable accommodations. This is in regards to the American Disabilities Act, that kind of thing. Right to lunch breaks. Right to 10, 15-minute breaks. Right to go to the bathroom. Jeff Bezos. Right to family medical leave and sick time. Which the rail workers had a time, but they did get something. Maybe not enough, but this is something that is being attacked right now, the right to be paid overtime. Right to unionize. Right to be free from discrimination. Now, the GOP will say, "Oh, what are you talking about? That's CRT talk. There is no discrimination. We treat everybody the same. We treat everybody like crap." That's crap.
That's an outright lie.
The right to a reasonable work schedule, which means no 18-hour days. The right to keep copies of documents you sign. And that's a big one, because if you sign something, give it to your boss, and they say, "Oh, well, you signed this, that you don't get a copy," they can lie about it, in the future. So that's just a few of the things that you have a right to. Now, that's what you have a right to now. But I would take a look at this. This is a history of sweatshops in the United States. This is pre-1900 and early 1900s, where the working conditions, you had unsanitary, unregulated nature of sweatshops, poor ventilation, no fire prevention, which we talked about with the shirtwaist fire, and I put that in there. Very, very low wages, almost to the point of slave wages, and ridiculous hours, dirty work conditions, no lunch breaks, the whole 9 yards. And that's what we're going back to. I know there was an article we talked about 2 weeks ago where not only are Republicans trying to push back on child labor and say that child labor is legal, but they wanted to take lunch breaks away from kids.
That was Louisiana.
That was in Louisiana.
They actually voted against giving a lunch break to child workers. Not required.
This is a Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. This is in regards to safety, building safety, workplace safety, all of that. The Republicans are trying to argue now that OSHA is government overreach and executive power overreach. This is what you get when you have no regulation of safety. This is a short history. This talks about like the 50s and that kind of thing, where Republicans were more union friendly, quote unquote. I remember back in the day, who was working? White men
Amen.
for the most part, and now that was their bread and butter right there. There's another article here which I'll just say kind of goes into the progression of the Republicans being hostile towards the labor movement, primarily Newt Gingrich, but also Ronald Reagan with his crushing of the air traffic controllers union. So there's Newt posing next to dinosaurs, which I think is oddly appropriate, I guess.
Too bad one of those things wasn't alive. Just saying.
So this okay. This is an article from Common Dreams, basically talking about why Republicans want to get rid of unions, and it is money, pure and simple. And
it's giving corporations what they want, which is carte blanche to do whatever they want,
right.
with no repercussion and no protection for the American workers.
I remember this. Again, go back to our show 2 weeks ago if you missed it. McDonald's was just cited for having 10-year-olds working around grease. Okay. So just because you have
2 o'clock in the morning
and working till 2 o'clock in the morning, we're going back to child labor. Okay. That's what they want. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do and save money by creating sweatshops and that whole thing. I just thought this was interesting. I want to throw this in here. This is a chart that shows the unemployment numbers or percentages. If you notice, there's a direct correlation. The African Americans are always more unemployed than the Hispanics, who are always more unemployed than the Caucasians. Doesn't show causality, but when you have some Archie Bunker type dude saying, hey, they're taking my jobs away, take a look at the numbers. Give me a break. And yes, there was a big spike around 2020 and 2021. Guess why? Because of COVID. So this is a few months ago when the Republican primaries were going on. I'm not going to go through this whole thing. The one thing that I will say is that Donald Trump himself talked about being union friendly when he used a non-union shop to present his argument, and the United Auto Workers immediately called him out. Something to look at. None of the Republican candidates are union friendly. I'm not going to go through all of it. They're already out of the primary, so this is Project 2025. Conservative groups draw a plan to dismantle the U.S. government and replace it with Trump's vision. Now, this is not just the labor movement. This is almost every government organization except maybe the Department of Defense, Department of Education, everything.
Yeah,
So
EPA, everything.
this is the Heritage Foundation. This was just an opinion piece I found on unions. This is by a talking head. His name is James Shirk. He's a research fellow in labor economics for the Heritage Foundation. And here's what he's saying. Now, obviously, I don't agree with this. Union function as labor cartels, restricting the number of workers in a company or industry to drive up the remaining workers' wages. That is garbage. I mean, who basically drives employment numbers are the employers. Look at what Elon Musk just did at Twitter. He gutted the labor force there.
You did.
Over time, unions destroy jobs in the companies they organize and have the same effect on business investment as does the 33% point corporate income tax increase. He also says union benefit their members, but hurt consumers generally, and especially workers who are denied job opportunities. Again, give me a break. uh, the idea of union members hurting consumers, the purpose of the union is to make sure that that we not only are paid, appropriately. And by the way, what is the minimum wage now
Nationwide,
nationwide?
I think it's 7 something, isn't it?
Right. I thought it was going up to 10,
Yeah, 10. It goes
but
up to 10, but I think that I'm not sure when that is. June, maybe? I don't know. Let me look.
right. I
Keep
believe it
talking, I'll
is.
look.
Yep. Well, the
It's
point
15 in
being,
Massachusetts. I know that.
we talked about it. The cost of living, in order to really live, you have to make like $35 an hour now,
Yeah.
as far as hourly wage.
Yeah. You can forget the fight for 16 or the fight for 15. That was back in 2016. It is now, 2024. It's 8 years later. And that doesn't count.
Okay. Congress should remember that union cartels retard economic growth and delay recovery when considering legislation that would force workers to join unions. Again, number one,
Okay.
they're all,
Let me interrupt
yeah,
one quick minute.
go ahead.
As of July 1st, 2024, the federal minimum wage will be $10.50 an hour.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I didn't really, yeah, I forgot to hit that one. But this idea of forcing workers to join unions, here's my thing about right to work, and I'll go into it again. Uh, I don't have a problem with workers who don't want to join a union, but if you don't want to join a union, you don't get our services. That's how I feel about it. Where else do you not pay for something and you get it anyway?
Look, at unions have been around since my father was alive.
Right.
You pay union dues. It's a long-standing tradition. Okay, it's not a big deal. Okay, it's not something brandy new. It's something that hasn't been going on for literally decades. You pay union dues. You don't want to pay the union dues, you don't join a union. You have a choice. No one's forcing anyone to do anything.
But here's the thing, this idea of union cartels, we're cartels now, retard economic growth. All right.
Crap.
We have four. We have four companies saying that the National Labor Relations Board is unconstitutional because, in some way, shape, or form, I don't know about Trader Joe's, but I know Starbucks, Bezos and Amazon, and Elon Musk through SpaceX, they have been given adverse actions against them by the NLRB and immediately turned around and said that they're unconstitutional. So you're saying that these are the businesses that are being adversely affected? All I'm asking you to do, I'm not going to put this in the sources. Check, either watch this because I'm going to show you the numbers, or Google it yourself. These will probably change over time, but so here we go. Trader Joe's, $13 billion a year right now. Elon Musk and this is just SpaceX. Remember, Elon Musk is the richest man on the planet, but $55 million a year, SpaceX. Amazon, $225 billion. How are we retarding their growth?
We're
And
retarding their
Starbucks.
creed. We're retarding their.
And,
That's all.
exactly. Starbucks, $9.4 billion. And Deb and I both have worked for Starbucks.
I have. I worked for Starbucks, however, when it was a good company.
Yeah.
I started in 2005, but it was a very different company by the time I left in 2014. I spent 9 years there. So
this is just talking about Project 2025. Part of this is that some of the heads of agencies, they are mandated to be non-partisan. Trump wants to take that away and create partisan department heads, like the department, like actually, not for nothing, like the Postmaster General,
well,
who's a
wants to go
Republican
deep. It's going to
megadonor.
be deeper than that because he's going to
It
take
is.
every civil servant and reclassify
Yes.
their job.
Yes.
And then once he
And-
determines which ones are loyal to him, he will retain. And the ones he aren't loyal to him, he will be able to fire if they're reclassified and replace them with political appointments. That is the stuff of fascism. Okay.
Now, this is from Christian Science Monitor talking about what Deb just talked about, and also from Politico. Now, I understand this is an opinion piece, but there are facts behind it. It's a reality.
It's a patronage system. It's making sure that Donald Trump has anybody, anywhere he needs to have them that will say, yes, Donald, to everything he wants to do. That's what he's trying to create.
Yep. This is creating a monarchy and creating fascism.
Yep.
Now, this is the Project 2025 page. And from there, you get the conservative mandate for leadership, the conservative promise. Now, we did a series on this, and I'm going back to it for a minute. I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to kind of nutshell it. We have the chapter on labor. Okay. Hold on.
Which, by the way, might be a chapter that everybody might just pass over, but which they shouldn't.
Right.
There's so much horrible in this document that you might, be tempted to just not even look at it.
Okay. Oh, there we go. All right. So, Chapter 18, Department of Labor and Related Agencies. Okay. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'll read the first sentence. At the heart of the conservative promise is the resolve to reclaim the role of each American worker as the protagonist in his or her own life. All right, I'm stopping there. Because here's what this plan is stating it wants to do. Get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Get rid of anything talking about racism in the workplace. Rip out a lot of the EEO standards. Take out the EEOC reporting records and eliminate that budget. Also, to simultaneously rip out any protections under the law for LGBTQ while strengthening religious group freedoms of expression and speech, which while you're taking away any defense for the LGBTQ community, you're empowering religious groups to be hateful towards that community and possibly even fire them or take adverse action against them. And there's a lot more to it. Child labor. They're talking about taking away the child labor protections, which we did a whole show on. Eliminating OSHA. So, Dave, you think I should go through a little bit of this or no? This is a huge chapter, but that's the crux of what they want to do.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you
It's
think?
just I think they should read it on their own, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you should. You know, OSHA is what keeps you safe. Okay, it's what keeps people safe when they're working in meatpacking plants. It keeps people safe when they're working around heavy equipment and machinery. And if you think that eliminating OSHA is a good move when you're dealing with a greedy corporation, you got another thing coming to you. I'd read this chapter. We don't
Yep.
have to read to you. You know, we don't have to read to you. We know there are some things that can't be put into memes. This is one of them.
Oh, what just happened? Oh, there we go. There's a couple things. Number one, well, all right. Workplace discrimination and abuse is far more common than we might think. Again, the Heritage Foundation wants to say that it doesn't exist. They just want to magically make it disappear.
Or they just want you to pretend it isn't happening. One or the other
Right.
will do.
Now, this is an article from the San Diego Union Tribune. EEOC issues new workplace harassment guidelines. This is from very recent, May 10th of this year. This is an article by Dan Eaton. Now, it's federal law. It doesn't have the force of law, and it's a resource for a particular state. But it does say a couple of things that people have to understand. Number one, not all workplace harassment is unlawful. Just being a jerk here and there isn't necessarily worthy of an EEOC complaint. You have to have a viable adverse action against you because of an inherent quality you have, whether it be gender, gender identity, race, whatever.
Right.
Okay. And uh there are certain guidelines, examples, and all of that stuff. Unlawful hostile environment workplace harassment is conduct based on protected characteristic that the employee subjectively considered abusive and that was objectively severe or pervasive. The big one is a supervisor groping somebody at work. That is, obviously extreme. It happens. It's not that common, but it does happen. Or making inappropriate comments, that kind of stuff. But disciplining someone because they're lazy or this group is lazy or that group is no, that's a violation. I just put this in how Amazon crushes unions. One thing I didn't mention, the Heritage Foundation wants to take away all confidentiality when it comes to workers placing their vote as to whether or not a union should be established in their business. It absolutely should be confidential because if you put up a public vote saying, I want a union, that empowers a business to discriminate against you or potentially fire you. And Amazon has done that. Amazon has union busted. There are uh, there are documented cases of it. one other thing. In regards to the freedom of religion, I do have this in here. This is the freedom from prosecution, being prosecuted based on your religion, not the freedom to impose your religion on someone else or to impose public policy or governmental policy based on your religion. There's something in the Constitution called the Lemon, the Lemon, not the Lemon Law, but it's like the Lemon Principle. There are certain things that you have to meet. One of them, in regards to religion, is you cannot be imposing public policy on people. This is from the Southern Poverty Law Center, talking about basically white supremacy, white nationalism, Christian identity groups that are oppressive, as well as that. So this is okay. So we have the First Amendment in religion, and this is what I was talking about. So the basic thing is that there is no excessive entanglement between church and state. And what does that mean? It means that the church cannot impose rules on other people about what they can do. Can't tell them that, you can't be trans. Okay. Transgender. Sorry. So, this is another one, Christian nationalist group, which, by the way, these Christian nationalist groups were part of the attempted insurrection in 2021. So
It's not about Christianity and it's not about God. It's about power.
it's not about religious freedom.
Well,
It's not.
It's about oppression.
Now, here's the next one. So this is in regards to the National Labor Relations Board, which is an organization or a group that it regulates what bosses can do, what management can do. It enforces laws, and it also regulates what unions are doing and makes sure that the unions are doing the right thing in terms of protecting their members and doing their job. So Amazon, SpaceX, and Trader Joe's, they're getting together and basically saying that that the National Labor Relations Board is abusing executive power, basically. This this was established years ago and actually deemed constitutional back in the 30s. And what happened with, I'm not sure about what happened with Trader Joe's, but I know with Amazon and with SpaceX, they were given adverse actions, or they were basically lost their case through the National Labor Relations Board, and then not only complained about it, Starbucks has one too. Very shortly thereafter, they questioned the validity of the very group that judged against them. And the reason why we have a National Labor Relations Board, it's slow enough to get a case between the National Labor Relations Board or decided. Imagine how long it would take to protect these workers if you went to the courts or if you went through federal legislation, especially if it was GOP freaking House or Senate.
You don't know what happened to Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's has been trying to stop the formation of unions. That's really what it is.
Okay, they're union busting.
Just like Starbucks, they're right up there with Starbucks.
Okay, so this is from the American Prospect. Obviously, they're left leaning in their opinion, but I do like this article.
That's
This
what they're doing,
article.
though. That's
Yeah,
the headline is
it's
accurate.
exactly what they're doing.
Exactly what they're doing.
Now, the reason that SpaceX was cited is because they fired people who spoke against Elon Musk. I thought Elon Musk was all about the freedom of speech.
He is, except it's when you're speaking about him.
Him, right? Exactly. Well, so that last one, um, that's a graph. I can't really show it because supposedly they don't want it to be republished, but all I have to do is cite it. My point with that one is simply that just because you're a religious group doesn't mean that you're nice people. And doesn't mean you're not going to oppress. That was a chart based on religions and their attitudes towards LGBTQ plus communities. And these groups do not have a right to impose their morality on other people. Now, a this is a call for a right to work constitutional amendment, which basically means that every worker has a right not to join a union.
You don't need it. Every worker has a right not to join a union. Every worker has a right not to join a union. You don't have to join a union. No one's coming to your door with a gun and telling you have to join a union tomorrow. Why do we need a constitutional amendment? Just asking.
And my point is that's fine, but don't come clamoring to me or a rep when you think your rights are being violated when you're not paying for the service.
We don't need a constitutional amendment, a constitutional right to work, a constitutional amendment. We don't need any of that. That's bullshit.
This is the National Labor Relations Board, the actual federal website. And this is what they say. You have a right to be represented by your union fairly, in good faith, and without discrimination. Your union has a duty to represent all employees, whether members of the union or not. Now, do I agree with that? I always feel as though you have to pay for a service. Now, it doesn't say the level to which, but in good faith and without discrimination. This duty applies to virtually every action that a union may take in dealing with an employer as your representative, including collective bargaining, etc. Because if it affects one, it affects all. But the right to work laws, in my humble opinion, is another way to chip away at funding. The main way unions get their funding is through union dues.
That's right.
And there are inherent costs, not just paying their union member or their union reps. Just the simple act of filing a national grievance, it takes reams of paper, it takes ink, it takes labor hours, all of that. You have arbitrators who get paid, and the union splits the cost with management. So, in order to represent its members fairly and equitably, they have to have an operational cost.
Look, let me put this to you simply. I know people who are spending $17,000 a year to send their kid to high school. You pay union dues. Okay, it's as simple as that. All right.
Now, the reason I'm putting this in here, union petitions up 35%, unfair labor practices charge filing up 7% in the first half of fiscal year. If you remember, we spoke about the budget. The National Labor Relations Board, their budget was flatlined. So they're getting the same amount of money to work with when the number of cases are going up. So that's going to affect their effectiveness because they're not going to have as many resources dealing with more workload. All right. This is just talking about, representation of non-union members. And this was a Supreme Court decision. I believe it was in 2018. Again, chipping away at resources. This is just talking about going into OSHA. This is how much it costs yearly, not the employer necessarily, but this is the cost to everything. Total in 2022, $167 billion a year in workplace accidents. Now we're talking about medical costs to the individual as well, loss of work, all of that. This is oh, I thought that was the ocean. Never mind. This is a Supreme Court justice or a Supreme Court case about the vaccine issue, but Republicans took the vaccine thing and just expanded and said, okay, OSHA shouldn't exist because it's an abuse of executive power. So the National Labor Relations Board and OSHA, an MOU is just a memo of understanding. It's basically an agreement, a loose agreement to strengthen health and safety protection. So they're just basically agreeing to work together and pool their resources together because both of the departments were their budget was flatlined.
By the GOP.
By the GOP. This is just an article talking about is OSHA unconstitutional? No, it's not.
Is the GOP unconstitutional? Yes, it is.
Now, there is a case coming up. This is from March of 2024. OSHA's authority could face a SCOTUS challenge. And again, you're not talking about one specific thing. They're challenging the existence of OSHA, basically. Understand, number one, OSHA was created by the Nixon administration. So they're talking about executive overreach. Now, Biden has just allowed these people to create jobs and departments. He isn't like a puppet master. So, this is SpaceX. They were cited for firing 7 workers for being critical of Elon Musk. NLRB put gave them a loss, and Elon Musk immediately said, well, you guys are unconstitutional anyway. So Federal Labor Board has been much more pro-worker under Biden. And employers want the courts, specifically the Supreme Court, to end that. So what we're talking about is the elimination of regulatory agencies. And remember what I said about the conditions back in the 1900s, we could very easily go back to that. This is just a National Labor Relations Board site. This is an NLRB ruling giving the workers path the union to unionize without having to vote, which would truly help them because it would help expedite the process. And also keep that whole, open vote thing out of the equation. So now we have a Democratic bill proposal, which was already shot down by the Republican Senate, by the way. This is a few years ago. One of the most significant bills to strengthen workers' abilities to organize in the past 80 years is headed to a vote next week in the House, which passed in the House because it was a Democratic House at the time. The Protecting the Right to Organize Act would amend some of the country's decades-old labor laws to give workers more power during disputes at work, add penalties for companies that violate labor law. These organizations are not able to, well, OSHA is, but the NLRB isn't right now. They're talking about potentially giving businesses a $5,000 fine. Now, for a smaller business, okay, that might be a big deal. But for Amazon, you think they give a crap about a $5,000 fine? So it would also weaken right to work laws in 27 states that allow employees to forego participating and paying dues to unions. So it was never even introduced in the Senate. Here's a copy of the bill. So, oh yeah, this is another number in regards to the amount of damage that's done by work related accidents. 167 billion was that number.
But
So
to society, not specifically to employers.
to society, not specifically to employees. So we're talking about, out of pocket costs, traveling to doctors, that kind of thing, loss of work, that stuff. So the bottom line is that if you want things to not deteriorate and at least stay the same, it's not great, the workplace conditions and all of that. Like, you want to see things deteriorate, give the power to the people who want to dismantle regulatory agencies even more. And it's not just about wages, compensation. It's about the right to be treated fairly and with dignity and respect in the workplace. It's about working in a safe environment, a safe building, a building that has safe floors, no holes in the floor, no giant leaks in the roof, no electrical damage, nothing falling from the roof, safe equipment, that kind of thing. And Deb, I know we did a show on Amazon, I would say probably 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, we did.
About some of that and employees dying.
Yeah.
And not being, their
about,
families not being.
About the warehouse not being air conditioned and
right.
not allowing the doors to remain open because they were worried about people stealing. So instead, they had ambulances waiting outside in case anybody had heat stroke. I mean, you got to be kidding me. We're not supposed to have any work. We're not supposed to have any worker protection at all. We're supposed to be totally at the mercy of the right wing and the corporate empire. That's really what they're saying here. Because by and large, that's who's funding the right wing, the corporate empire.
For the people, listen, for the people who are going the other way, saying, well, genocide Joe and all that stuff about Israel, blah, blah, blah. Look at what's happening right in front of you. Okay.
I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to just say it flat out. And I don't care who wants to hear it and who doesn't. Anytime you're going to put this country second to another nation, you don't belong here. It's as simple as that. You live here. Right now, we can't help anything that's going on there once the GOP is in control. They will be all Israel all the time. I can promise you that. That's not even in question. They've already got Jared Kushner over there developing land. He just got his first building thing in Israel, just so everyone understands
Right.
what's going on here in the United States. This, where you live, comes first. That's my number one priority. What's going on in the Middle East does not even figure into my voting. I'm not even looking at that. That's been a decades-long situation. And right away, I'm going to tell you the only approach to solving that is to have a two-state solution. And that is a situation that will take a while to create here. Okay. There's a whole article on it. I'm actually planning on making a video on it about why it doesn't figure into my voting. I don't care what happens over there. I am looking at what we are going through right here, right now. And that's
And
the only thing that is on the ballot in November.
that doesn't mean that we don't care about people across the world.
I don't.
But
I do care actually quite a bit. And I do
right,
believe that Israel's out of control. But I also understand what Hamas is, and they are not a government. And the
right,
only reason they took on the role of being the government for Gaza was because of its proximity to Israel. Okay. Hamas has
right,
not been a good actor for a very long time. All right. Let's just leave it at that.
right. But my point being that there are certain things that we can control right now. And if you think the GOP doesn't care about us, do you really think they care about anything other than something that will further their own agenda? Do you
They
really
don't care
think they
about
care
anybody
about
else.
people
They
in
don't care about
Yemen or
anybody.
any of
They
that?
want to make us they want to close the borders. They don't want to deal with anybody outside the US. Donald Trump has already given Vladimir Putin carte blanche to attack anyone he wants if they don't pay their dues. Okay? Understand this and understand that I
I know.
can't. I can't. I've been on this now for over a year. If
Right,
you can't get up every morning, turn on your computer, look at the news every day, and understand what's going on here. Listen to the words of the orange blob, and understand that he's telling you exactly what he's going to do, and he is going to do it. Then I can't help you. Nobody can help you.
right,
This country is
right.
only as good as the people in it. This is on us now.
And if we can't protect ourselves, if we can't unionize and protect ourselves and protect our own interests, what the hell? How are we going to help anyone else?
We're not. We're not.
So anyway,
That's it,
that's what I
Ken.
have.
We will be back next week. And you have a good one.